I'm Lizzie Harrison for Card Player TV, here today with Vanessa Selbst. She just won her first bracelet in the $1,500 buy-in Pot Limit Omaha event. Congratulations, Vanessa.
Thank you.
So have you been playing Pot Limit Omaha for a long time?
Yeah, I've been playing Pot Limit Omaha since I began playing poker. Mostly I learned it probably about 4 or 5 years ago and been playing online a bunch. It's recently caught on more, but...
Yeah, it's gaining popularity.
Yeah, definitely. But I was playing it sort of long before that. So,
really?
Yeah.
So what do you think is the strongest aspect of your game?
And PLO?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I recognize I'm still able... hand reading in general in poker is my strongest, my biggest strength as a poker player. Mm-hmm. So when I'm able to hand read well in PLO, I can recognize situations and apply pressure when I think that, someone's going to... There's so many coin flip situations in PLO or situations. It's a game where, people joke you're never less than a 60-40 in PLO. Basically, there's a ton of situations where it's not, it's closer than 55-45, so it's like a coin flip. And if you recognize that situation and apply pressure and get the other person to fold with a coin flip, I mean, that's huge, obviously. So just recognizing those situations, applying the pressure where pressure's due, and then using your big stack well.
Well, what skills that aren't really used in Hold'em manifest themselves in PLO?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a similar game. I think you have to know more math,
all right,
probably, because there's a lot more sort of like equity situations that you don't necessarily find. You have to sort of figure out more often than not, like how to play in multi-way pots, because often if you have a draw to the non-nuts, like if you have a draw,
mm-hmm.
You might not want to play it in Omaha because
you can hit it and still be bad.
Exactly, like you'll often hit it and someone will have a better draw than you. So just recognizing those situations, and then using position more. Position's like probably the most important thing in PLO, and I mean it's important in Hold'em too, obviously, but in PLO it's like the ultimate factor that you should factor into every decision. So just using position really well, I think, is important too.
Well, you said you're really good at reading your opponents. What goes into you deciding what range of hands they have?
I don't really know what goes into it. I mean, it's just like intuition. I mean,
really?
It's a lot of but it's a lot of hands played. It's a lot of situations. I mean, obviously I'm not going to put them on the exact 4 cards that they have, but you can often tell what draws are out, what draws they're representing. Are they sort of like what range of hands they can have, and you can narrow that range.
What types of mistakes do you see people make?
Just way too passively. People
really?
Are playing their draws, and it's just really obvious, especially in PLO, when you have a draw. Like people, especially in the tournaments, will bet out with, an overpair, which in PLO is not a very good hand. And you see people just check calling with a draw, where let's say you have like a 10-7-3, 2-spade board.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got 8-9 with spades, but they're afraid because their spades aren't, nut spades.
They're not nuts, yeah.
So they, they have a straight flush draw. They might even have a wrap, like 8-9 jack, but with non-nut spades. And so they're afraid. So instead of, even in a heads-up pot, instead of like raising, and just sort of, accepting it if someone's got a better draw, they have a better draw, like they'll just sort of check call, and makes it really easy for someone with a very weak made hand to sort of control the situation and position. So especially out of position, people are playing way too passively, I think.
How important is sizing your bets correctly in PLO?
I use bet sizing. I'm one of the only people that seem to use it in the tournament.
Really?
It's interesting because most people just bet the pot. It's a pot limit game. People tend to bet the pot.
People are used to playing no limit.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's in PLO, often when you have a made hand, if you have a set, the best bet to make would be pot, because you want to price out the draws. People have a ton of draws. People have a ton of outs against you in PLO, so you want to charge them as much as possible.
Right.
The problem is you don't always have a set, and you don't always have a hand strong enough that you can get value from worse hands. So, you really have to sort of like adjust your bet sizing so you don't give away the strength of your hand. Like if you always pot it with a good hand, well, then you have to pot it with your bluff too. But when you pot it with your bluff, you're committing so many chips that it's just like really detrimental to your stack if you get called. So I tend to bet, somewhere between pot and half pot, depending on, mostly the board texture, also the strength of my hand, but mostly the board texture and what I think my opponent has and stuff like that. And so that way I can sort of make the optimal bet for the situation rather than just being limited to either pot or check,
And that was beneficial to you in the tournament
definitely,
you just won?
Definitely, because, I would bet in situations, sometimes I bet half pot and I had a monster, but,
mm-hmm.
When you bet half pot, you have a monster. It's all what you think your opponent's going to do. If you think it's a really draw-heavy board, let's say, the board is 10-7-5 with 2 spades, and maybe I have a set and a nut flush draw. I might bet small because, they'll think, like, why would she bet small on such a draw-heavy board with a good hand? But it's like, because I'm not scared of anything,
Okay.
Something like that. So you can sort of make those decisions and make those reads based on what you think your opponent's going to do. And that was really beneficial because, using position well, I was able to sort of bluff for cheap and also get paid off when I needed to get paid off.
Well, let's talk about the tournament a little bit more. You seem to be big stacked a lot of the way. You had a nice chip lead going into the final table. How'd you build that up?
A lot of luck. How do you build a stack in
every
tournament,
poker tournament, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had 2 huge suck outs, or not suck outs. I mean, I had one hand against Menwin early where I flopped. It was Jack 8-2, 2 spades. I flopped top pair, a gut shot, and a spade draw. Mm-hmm. And he actually had an overpair, the same gut shot, but a better gut shot, and a higher spade draw. So it was sick. He had the worst hand I could possibly see, and I had a running full house against him.
Did he go
nuts?
That was
nice. Of course he went nuts. Yeah, he's men win, so whatever.
He's the master.
Yeah, I guess so. And anyway, so there was against him, and then another guy, like, I had shown a massive bluff. Oh, this was awesome. I have to brag about this bluff.
All right, go right ahead.
I had ace-10, 5-4 with hearts.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, and I limp, and someone else raises, and he's usually got big cards there. And the small blind calls, and I call. And the flop comes king, 9, 8, 2 clubs. So I have, like, absolutely
yeah.
Which, okay, so it checks around. It turns at 5, so I still have, like, absolutely nothing. And the small blind bets out, and I basically pot raised, committing most of my chips with just, like, absolutely nothing.
What prompted you to do that?
I just, like, didn't really feel like he had a big hand. The small blind was aggressive. The big blind position is so important in PLO because when people check, it's a lot more honest than a hold'em. You can't slow play as much because there's so many draws. So when he checks a king, 9, 8, 2 club board, he never has a hand. So the small blind obviously knows that, and he's gonna, recognize that. And I don't think he's calling out of the small blind with, like, small cards that can make straights there. Maybe he has, like, 6, 7, 8, 9. But I thought more often he has, like, a 2-pair hand or some sort of draw, something like that. So, I decided to put him to the test and raise, and I could very easily have 6, 7. So, put him to a decision, and he folded. I showed it, because it's the craziest bluff I've ever made, PLO. Bluffing on that board with absolutely nothing, not even a draw, is pretty sick. So I showed my bluff, and then anyway, he went on to sort of, I think he, like, tilted and re-raised me with a really bad hand, and then actually hit a monster against me.
Oh, really?
But I sucked out, so it's all good.
That works.
And that's how you build stacks in tournaments.
Absolutely.
And then from that point on, I just, like, won every coin flip. I mean, like I said, I used my stack well to apply pressure, but, I mean, that's what it takes to win tournaments. I've won with 8. My aces held up, like, 3 times, which in PLO is insane.
Not likely.
I cracked aces a couple times all in pre-flop. Like, I had that one hand with the final table bubble where I knew someone had aces. I called off half my stack to try to crack them, and then I did. So just stuff like that, yeah.
So you took the big chip lead into the final table, you had it, and then when it got about 3-handed, weren't you short stacked?
I was, yeah. I doubled 2 of my opponents up. I doubled up one guy with, I flopped a wrap and a pair. 3-handed, he flopped an overpair, a straight draw, and a flush draw. I mean, 3-handed, we both had monsters. It's a cooler. He won the hand. I doubled him up, and then a few hands later, I had a full house against a bigger full house. I made a pretty bad call. I was getting 4-1. He check raised me on the river on an ace 2-2 XX board. Like, I knew he had pocket aces. I was probably on tilt a little bit. Made a pretty bad call with a small full house. And then I was down to 450,000 chips pretty quickly.
So how did you recover from that and come back to win the bracelet?
I just made some hands. I made some key bluffs.
It must have felt great to start chipping up again.
Yeah, I decided to use my position well, and I made one bluff where I called with a straight draw on a queen 9-2 2 diamond board against. I thought my opponent had made a hand, and the turn was a diamond, and he checked, so I bet into him for, like, most of my chips. But I know he had to fold his hand because I knew he didn't have a flush, and So, I made that bluff, and then I just made some hands and chipped up. I keep getting paid. I had an amazing image at the table. I mean, I was bluffing off a ton of my chips. And the guy to my left, Stan, even said something like, she's just going to keep bluffing off all her chips. So I had an amazing image, and finally, like, I got a hand versus him where it was Jack 10-8 all spades, and I had a 6 high flush, which isn't a great hand, but for the stacks that we had, 20 big blinds or 25 big blinds, or maybe it was more than that, 30, but the point was, for the steps we had, it's like, if he has a higher flush than me, I'm going broke. So I bet, and then I called his all in. He check raised me all in with bottom 2, which is a horrendous play. That's okay. He's not a nice guy. But, it's a horrendous play, and but I had a great image, so I guess he thought, like, I was bluffing and stuff like that. So, I managed to stack him when he thought I was bluffing, and then the final hand as well. I got him to check raise me all in with top pair, some overcards, and a straight draw, which was the best hand I could have seen, because against the nuts. I mean, if I don't have the nuts, he's not in bad shape, but I had the nuts, and he was in terrible shape, so. It worked out. My image worked out well.
Congratulations on your first bracelet, and good luck for the rest of the series.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming up today, Vanessa.
Definitely.
Lizzie Harrison with Vanessa Selbst for Card Player TV.